Start.
We're live.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining our open house tonight. I am Abha Dwivedi, Deputy City Engineer. Over the past 8 months, we've been working with the team at Wilson and Company to finalize our safety action plan, which was funded by Safe Streets for All grant funding. In tonight's final open house, members of the public have the final opportunity to make comments and provide their feedback before we take this plan to final adoption to council on March 17th. The members of the public will be able to provide their feedback on our project website starting now, and the comments will close on March 6th. With that, I will hand it over to Tim Roberts. I will also like to let everybody know that once the plan is finally adopted, we will be pursuing the implementation grant and hopefully be able to implement some of the safety concerns throughout the city. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Abba. So as Abba pointed out, we've been working on this development of this plan over the last year, starting last April. It's been quite an interesting project. This is our third open house and final chance to kind of look what we have pulled together through our efforts. If you could advance to the next slide, please.
Not working.
Yes, so as you mentioned, the City of Fountain was awarded a grant in 2024. It was through the Safe Streets for All program through the Federal Highway Administration. The Safety Action Plan is a building block to significantly improve the roadway safety in the City of Fountain. The Safety Action Plans are the first step of implementing safety projects. After we have the adoption of this plan, we will be able to, as Abba pointed out, we'll be able to pursue implementation grants for funded through the Safe Streets for All program. This is a national program, so we're competitive nationwide. There are two other efforts going on within the Pikes Peak region. It's the one through the Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments and the other one through the City of Colorado Springs. And we have been working together, collaborating efforts, especially on the fringe areas where we are touching boundaries. Next slide, please. Yes. So the Safe Streets for All program aims to eliminate fatal and serious injuries for all roadway users. It takes a unique approach where we are no longer just looking at removing all crashes, but looking at attacking the severe and fatality locations. So it's a new approach where we're focusing on the more severe, understanding that people make mistakes and you can't fix every crash. Next slide, please. So this approach is called the Safe Systems approach, and it's a multi-layer where you look at people taking on some responsibility and also policy and program. That's where City Council comes in. Safer roads through education, safer vehicles, technology and vehicles now are have crumple zones within their design, and you have technologies to know when you are going outside your travel lanes and even automatic braking. You have safer speeds where we have more speed enforcement. Maybe you look at narrowing roads to reduce that freedom to speed and you feel a little more confined and driving within the appropriate speed limit. And then also sound post crash care where you improve signal preemption for emergency response, or you have a more communicated and coordinated approach to when there is a crash and responding to that crash. Next slide, please. For this effort, we needed to include certain elements as part of the grant. It did require leadership commitment and goal setting. That's through a city resolution that there's a draft resolution within the plan itself. Of course, that document is going to be reviewed by Fountain's legal team and ABA and the administrators of the city. It has a planning and implementation structure. We had an oversight committee and a safety task force committee, and both of those were elements and key in developing, making sure that we were on the right track and proposing the right solutions, things that were acceptable to the city. And the intent is to continue a task force, which is a technical side, and have meetings continue after the adoption of the plan. We had the crash safety analysis, which Maureen will be covering in more detail. This public stakeholder engagement and collaboration, as we mentioned, this is our third and final meeting for a public meeting. And this is the opportunity for people to review the plan and give us comments on that plan. Equity considerations, those were taken in the development, and you'll see how they were applied in the formulas for prioritizing projects. Maureen will get into that. And actually, as we progress, and since we're in the tail end of this project, the policy and process recommendations, strategy and project selection, and process and transparency, those are the new items that we haven't discussed before and are part of today's presentation that Maureen will be covering. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Maureen.
Okay, I'm going to approach this from kind of giving you a lift up as you review and comment on the plan. So I'm going to go over these elements of the plan that need to be included. The first of which is the looking at the crash trends and analysis. We're required under this planning process to look at 5 years of crash data. The period for which we did that was 2020 to 2024, the most recent 5 years available. And you'll see in the Fountain area, there were 1,789 total crashes, 10 fatal crashes, and 28 serious injury crashes. Serious injury meaning, keep this in mind, an incapacitating injury that requires treatment. And you'll see that there are some shifts over the years. There's a slight increasing trend, but very much the dip is really during COVID when we were traveling less, but it's pretty stable, and we're running with 5 to 8 fatal and serious injury crashes per year. Looking at here, we look at crashes by mode, and there's 2 pie charts, and you'll see that intuitively you would know that most of the crashes are automobile involved just because of the sheer volume, and 1% bicycle and 1% pedestrians and 4% motorcycle. But if you look at serious injuries and fatalities, because those are what we call vulnerable users, those statistics shift a great deal, and pedestrians make up 11% of this, what we call KSI crashes, which are fatalities and serious injuries. Bicycles 2% and motorcycles 30%. And remember, motorcycles was only 4 of the total. Then if we look at crashes by crash type, we know that on some of the routes through Fountain, there's congestion, and the highest type of crash is the rear end crashes at 33%, followed by broadside and fixed object. And that's pretty understandable given the congestion that occurs in those areas. Those are ones that we can have intervention to, we know. And looking at location, we'll see that the intersections are a big part of our problem. The majority of the crashes occur at intersections with 59.8%, and another 11% are intersection related, meaning that whatever the queuing is at the intersection affects location downstream. And they might be related to driveways also at 21.5%. So a real area of focus. With the analysis of this, we were able to identify the top 13 priority intersections, and most of them, 9, fall on, actually, 12, fall on 3 corridors, which are Highway 16 Mesa Ridge Parkway and 85 Santa Fe and Fountain Mesa Road. And of these, the coloring that you see on the table, the blue intersections are City of Fountain jurisdiction intersections, and the rest are CDOT. CDOT was a partner through the course of the thing, and you'll learn more about that as I get into the project identification and prioritization. And you'll see those intersections on the second table down shows how those fall in the 3 corridors. And then the last part of the table shows pedestrian and bicycle crashes. Again, most of them falling on those corridors, with Alabama Avenue and Ohio Avenue the only areas that don't. So from this data, we identified a high injury network, and you'll see those 3 corridors, 85 Santa Fe, 16 Mesa Ridge Parkway, and Fountain Mesa. And then you'll see some of the intersections that fall outside of those corridors. So public engagement was also a keystone part of the safety action plan. So it's important how we engaged and what we heard. How we engaged is, Tim mentioned that we had an oversight committee that was made up of the leadership from the city, multiple departments, legal, the attorney, police and fire, of course, city engineering, who is sponsoring this study. And so then the safety task force brought in the partners. That includes a El Paso County, Colorado Department of Transportation, the Colorado State Patrol, the school districts, Fort Carson, everyone that should be at the table to decide this so that we address all of the problems. Community engagement, we attacked from many vehicles so that we could make sure that we optimized and really got the most input we could. We have a project website that you can access from the City of Fountain website or directly, and that's kind of a communication central for us. We launched a community survey, a pinpoint comment map, and a safety priority poll from that, and it has lots of information and keeps you up to date about what's happening on the project, and you'll see some images of that there. And of course, the open houses, of which this is third. The first 2 were in person and virtual, and that the meeting was replicated in kind of the format that you have with a real estate tour of a building, where you can pan through like you were at the open house venue, and you could actually see the boards and what would have been said by the members of the project team discussing those boards with you. This open house is also in person, and we'll have a recording of the presentation online. So what we heard, I mentioned that we had a safety priorities poll, and out of that came a focus on the most important priority to those that responded was focusing improvements on where you had crash concentrations, where there was an identified problem based on the data. And then what we heard was that it was very important that the implementation plan take into consideration community output or input, the identification of locations where you do not feel safe because of various conditions. And the third priority, which was underscored by what I showed you on the statistics, was to prioritize vulnerable user safety, the bicycle, pedestrian, motorcycles. And last, it was important to people that we consider equity in prioritizing the improvements, which is actually required by the Safety Action Plan program. Specific safety concerns included citywide safety needs, not just focusing on the crash locations, and location-specific safety concerns where people identified an intersection. So another thing that we had to do was look at policy, what policies exist and what we recommend. as changes by Fountain to improve safety throughout the city. And Fountain has adopted the 2020 Model Traffic Code for Colorado, and we propose some enhancements to strengthen the school zone safety program. Our partners from the school district are doing some studies on their own, and that I know is important to the public too. That's what we heard. To refine the on-duty definition for trucks, and again focused on the schools to boost public awareness of double school zone fines, and to explicitly reinforce pedestrian right-of-way. And then we recommend some new policies that you don't have. One is a complete streets policy where the travel way might be narrowed so that you can kind of affect the speeds traveled, and most importantly, that you provide facilities for all users, the pedestrians, the bicyclists, and the vehicles. And then to look at bicycle and micro mobility safety regulations, sometimes because they're kind of a disruption in the travel of the automobiles, we have to take special care. And we heard from the survey, the community survey, of what you thought was maybe the contributor to safety issues in Fountain, that distracted cell phones, that kind of thing, distracted driving was a problem. So a program to get people to change their behavior was what we recommended. And to formalize and expand safe routes to school. And this is kind of an administrative thing, but to review truck routes and specialized vehicle parking on a regular basis. So what can we do once we know where the crash concentrations are and what is going on there? What can we do to reduce injury and fatal crashes? This is another component of the study, is the toolkit. And there's two types of countermeasures. One, non-engineering, where we hit those elements of the safe systems approach: safer people, safe speeds, safer roads, safer vehicles, and post crash care. And these are mostly programmatic things that would be citywide that we would do. And then what you're probably more familiar with would be the engineering countermeasures, the things that you'd think of as a physical project that's put in place. Speed management would be where you go in and where the city would go in and do speed studies and determine what the appropriate speed limit is, and maybe make some changes. Intersections and roadways, you know that part, that would be enhancements at the intersection, roadway enhancements, shoulders, medians, that kind of thing. Signals, you could have dynamic warnings, signs that alert you in a condition where you might have a curve, so that you can be alerted before an intersection, that you're alerted about that condition. Signal timing and phasing improvements, and hardware upgrades. What do I mean by that? Phasing and timing, maybe you have what's called a protected permitted left turn, which means that when you have the green ball, you have to yield to traffic when you're turning. If you have a protected phase, then the conflicting traffic is stopping. So it's a safer condition. That's something that CDOT implemented at Mesa Ridge Parkway and Fountain Mesa. So hardware, those protectors that you see behind that block the sun behind the signals, that would be a hardware upgrade potentially. And then pedestrians and signing and striping are kind of focused together. High visibility crosswalk markings, and you probably have been at a signal where there's a countdown that tells you how many seconds you'll have the pedestrian phase, those kind of things. And of course, pedestrian refuge islands are things that you can do. Bikeways, you can have dedicated buffered. Well, dedicated bike lanes are better than riding in the lane, but if you have a buffer that's a no man's zone where cars can't go, that's safer too. Bike boxes help with turning, and bike specific signalization are another option. And then there's technology things, kind of speed harmonization, where the signals detect the volume of the vehicles and can change the speed. And you can actually have I think Tim mentioned this crash prediction and response deployment so that the signalization changes. So what do we do with this identification of the intersections and these countermeasures? The plan details for the 13 intersections what we recommend. You'll see that a lot of these there's little symbols, and so the kind of gold ones are traffic signals. So those are signalization improvements. Then there are some that are pavement signing and marking, and some that are more major construction projects, like at I-85 Santa Fe and Plaza Boulevard, where that would be an actual reconstruction of that intersection to a safer type of intersection. And CDOT is considering that now. And then for these corridors, again, a similar thing you'll see in the plan where we identify the characteristics of the corridor and then all of the measures throughout the corridor that we would use, including the intersection ones. So this one is Fountain Mesa. And then you'll see one for Highway 16 Mesa Ridge. And you'll see one for, well, I said it wrong. The first one was, anyway, there's one for each corridor. And I mentioned prioritizing improvements. So we did that on two levels. One was to take the input we received from the community safety poll, which the public and stakeholders told us what was most important from safety. And they are ranked in the order that you see here by the basis of that poll. So there's over here, over in the kind of graph on the right side, you'll see that crash concentrations would have an adjustment or a weighting of 3.5, whereas equity would have 1.2. So what did that mean? Here we see the corridor with Fountain Mesa and some with Santa Fe at the bottom in green. And you'll see that there are two scorings. There's that number score, the HIN score, that was based on the weighted score, numeric. That there's also one that's high, medium, and low that took into account stakeholder input and technical experts to see which were the highest priority that could have the, and cost was figured into that. You'll see costs on the far right. So see that at the other corridors. And then lastly, it's important that we keep current and that we monitor our progress. So we developed a safety dashboard. Wilson and Company developed that, and it is now hosted by the City of Fountain. And it's available online, and you can go in and look at details if you're interested in a specific year, a specific intersection. You can find the details on that for the 5 years that we have, which are 2020 to 2024. We will update annually. And the purpose of that is that as we implement the projects, we can monitor our path to see if what you saw in the first slide of the number of crashes, fatalities, and serious injuries, if we get improvements. And if we get improvements at specific intersections based on the improvements that we've made. So that concludes our presentation. Abba, did you want to say anything more?
No, I think it's important for people to know that if they do have any questions, you can reach out to us via project website. You will find project email, or you can even email myself at adwivedy@fountaincolorado.org. Like we said, this is the last chance to provide your comments. So if you do have any questions or feedback, please let us know. And that's it, Maureen.
Okay, and then just to reiterate one more time and reinforce what Abba said about the comments on the website, on the homepage, down near the bottom, you'll find a link that will allow you to open up the draft safety action plan for you to review, and you can use the comment form or the emails, and all of that is specified on the website, the alternatives you have to provide input. And from that launch pad, you can look at this dashboard that I've showed you, and you can also look at the pinpoint comment map and provide input there.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.